Okay, let's unpack this. Australia is preparing to execute a piece of digital legislation that is, well, genuinely a world first. And they're doing it aggressively.
Hmm.
We are talking about a national social media ban, a full ban for everyone under the age of 16.
It's definitely more than just regulation. It feels like a global line in the sand, really.
A national experiment, you could say.
Absolutely. It's being framed exactly like that.
Mm.
And you can bet every regulator, in the UK, Canada, the EU,
Mm.
even U.S. state legislatures,
Yeah.
they're all watching very closely.
Waiting to see what happens.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Because they're all dealing with similar
Yeah.
issues, right? But nobody else has taken quite this drastic step. Not yet, anyway.
So that's the mission for this deep dive, then. We're aiming to cut through the noise, get you informed fast.
Yeah, understand the nuts and bolts.
We need to understand the logistics of this hard ban,
Sure.
the urgent reasons that drove a government to such a radical move.
The fallout, too. The economic and social impacts that are already starting to ripple through.
And critically, those strong counterarguments about whether this whole thing will actually, work.
Right. So just to set the baseline for you, what are we actually talking about?
Hmm.
Starting December 10th, 2025,
Next year.
if you are under 16 in Australia, you just cannot have an account on 9 key social platforms, period.
And that list is, well, it's basically the teenage digital world, isn't it? Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, X.
Reddit, Discord, Threads,
Mm-hmm.
it covers almost the entire universe, where, frankly, a lot of teenagers spend their time online.
It's huge.
There is one interesting exception, though, and it kind of highlights the law's focus: YouTube.
Ah, okay. So how does that work?
Well, users under 16 can still watch YouTube videos.
Hmm.
Passive consumption is okay.
Hmm.
But they're specifically banned from creating accounts. So no uploading their own videos, no commenting. The restriction really targets that interactive content creation side.
Which makes sense if the concern is about the pressures of engagement and comparison.
Precisely. And what makes this whole thing so unique is just how bold it is.
Hmm.
Aggressive, even.
Yeah, this isn't about tweaking settings or adding more parental controls that people can opt into or out of.
No. The Australian government went straight for a total access ban. It sets probably the most uncompromising global standard we've seen so far in this space.
Okay, so let's get into the mechanics. How is this supposed to actually function on the ground?
Well, the policy is designed to be pretty tough. The start date is fixed, December 10th, 2025. And the responsibility, that falls squarely on the platforms themselves.
They'd have to enforce it.
They have to.
Yeah.
They must block any new accounts from under 16s, and this is key. They have to actively go back and deactivate existing accounts belonging to Australian users under 16.
Wow, okay. And here's a detail that really jumped out at me from the sources. No exception for parental consent. None.
That's right. And it's very deliberate. The government's stance seems rooted in research suggesting the platform design itself, the algorithms, the feedback loops, might still negatively impact development, even with a parent looking over their shoulder.
So parental permission doesn't override the ban.
Nope. It's not a suggestion. It's the law.
Hmm.
And the penalties for not following it, they're designed to be pretty impossible to ignore.
We're talking big numbers.
Very big. Companies that fail to comply could face fines up to AUD $50 million.
Which is about, what, $32.5 million US?
Around that, yes. Serious money.
That is definitely regulatory hardball. And the fine structure, it's scaled, isn't it? Based on company size.
Correct. The idea is to ensure a fair impact, meaning the penalties are designed to really sting the biggest players, the ones with the deepest pockets. They can't just write it off as a cost of doing business.
But hang on, this immediately throws up a massive challenge, doesn't it? Age verification.
Oh, absolutely. This is probably the biggest logistical hurdle. The law says platforms have to make a reasonable effort to verify ages.
But it doesn't say how.
Exactly. No official government playbook on the methods, so the platforms are kind of scrambling.
So what are they looking at? Government IDs, facial scanning? That sounds worrying.
Well, those are some of the things being explored, yes. Cross-referencing government IDs, maybe using AI, age estimation tech, potentially working with third-party verification services to handle the data.
But if they start demanding government IDs or detailed scans just to check if a 15-year-old can use TikTok, aren't we swapping one huge risk, the mental health one, for another? Like a massive data security nightmare.
That is precisely the fear. Privacy advocates are raising exactly that point.
The cure being worse than the disease.
Potentially. The worry is that this huge nationwide verification effort could require collecting vast amounts of sensitive data, creating all sorts of new privacy vulnerabilities. It's a classic policy trade-off, a really tough one.
Okay, so those fines, $50 million. That's serious leverage. But to really understand why the government is playing this kind of hardball, we need to look beyond the money, right? Straight into the reasons behind it.
Absolutely. And the primary driver, the main justification put forward, is the adolescent mental health crisis.
They're drawing a direct line between social media use and declining well-being.
A very direct line. Australian health officials have pointed to quite alarming increases in anxiety, depression, and just general poor well-being among teenagers.
Are there specific numbers?
Yes, one statistic that got a lot of attention was from Pediatric Mental Health Services. They reported something like a 43% jump in consultations for anxiety among 12 to 15-year-olds.
43%. Wow.
Yeah, just in the 5 years between 2019 and 2024. It's a worrying trend.
So it sounds like the government decided this wasn't just about isolated issues like cyberbullying or seeing bad content. It was the platforms themselves.
Precisely. The lawmakers were quite open about it. They explicitly said they were targeting what they called harmful design features.
Things built in to keep kids hooked.
Exactly. Think about the infinite scroll, you never reach the end.
Yeah.
The constant focus on metrics like likes and followers, those relentless notification pings, and of course, the algorithm-driven feeds that are designed to keep you glued.
It's the whole architecture of the attention economy, isn't it? Deliberately designed to maximize engagement, especially with young, developing brains.
That's the core insight the government seems to be acting on. They cited these features as creating deep psychological dependence, those dopamine loops we hear about.
And they felt the industry wouldn't fix it themselves.
That was the explicit message. The law is framed as a direct reaction to what the government termed the tech industry's, quote, inability to self-regulate. They basically said, we waited, nothing meaningful changed, so now we act.
And they had evidence the existing rules weren't working anyway, right? Like the age 13 minimum.
Yeah, that was another key point. The e-safety commissioner, Julie Inman Grant, highlighted data showing that 73%, nearly three-quarters of Australian kids aged 8 to 12, were already on these platforms.
Despite the supposed age gap?
Exactly. It showed that the platform's existing self-verification methods were, frankly, pretty meaningless in practice. Kids were getting around them easily.
So given those concerns, how has the public reacted? Is there support for such a drastic move?
Well, the unity around it is actually quite striking. The polling data we saw suggests really strong public backing. Something like 76% of Australian adults overall are in favor.
And parents.
Even higher among parents of kids in that target age range, 8 to 15. Support jumps to 82% for them.
That's significant backing.
It really is, and it cuts across political divides, apparently. Plus, major groups like the Australian Education Union have come out in support, too. So there's a broad consensus favoring the ban's intent.
There's always a but with policies this big, isn't there? There must be pushback, concerns about unintended consequences.
Absolutely, and that's where you hear from other experts, digital rights advocates, some mental health professionals who might support the goal of protecting kids, but are really worried about the method.
What's the main concern?
The big one is the risk of isolation. The argument is that a blanket ban could unintentionally harm some of the most vulnerable teenagers.
You mean kids who rely on online communities because maybe they don't have support locally?
Exactly that. Think about LGBTQ plus youth in remote areas, for example, or teens dealing with specific mental health issues or trauma who find vital, sometimes anonymous, support and connection online that they just can't get face-to-face.
And pulling that digital rug out from under them.
Could actually intensify feelings of loneliness, isolation, maybe even depression. It's a serious concern.
And then there's the obvious reaction, telling teenagers they can't do something.
Right, the classic forbidden fruit effect. Prohibition often just makes people more determined to find a way around it.
Have we seen signs of that?
We have. Some preliminary surveys mentioned in the sources indicate that over 40% of Australian teens have already talked about how they might try to bypass these restrictions when they come in.
Okay, and beyond the social and psychological impacts, what about the economic side?
Yes. This is where we're already seeing some pretty dramatic real-world fallout even before the ban officially starts. It's being called the influencer exodus.
Wait, exodus? Like people leaving the country?
Literally. We're talking about families of young content creators, teenagers, some even younger, who earn significant incomes, sometimes six figures.
From platforms like TikTok or Instagram.
Exactly. And because their entire business model, their income, depends on access to these platforms for an Australian audience under 16, or being under 16 themselves, they're actually planning to move.
Move where?
Places like New Zealand, Singapore, maybe the US, somewhere they can continue their online businesses legally.
That's an incredibly stark consequence. A policy meant to protect young people is forcing families to potentially uproot their lives.
It highlights a really deep contradiction, doesn't it? A policy aimed at child well-being is simultaneously disrupting the livelihoods of young entrepreneurs, stripping away networking or professional opportunities they've built.
Or forcing their families into these huge, life-altering decisions.
Yes, it's a very immediate, very tangible economic impact.
Okay, so if 40% of teens are already talking about workarounds, let's get specific. What are the main evasion tactics that regulators are worried about?
Well, the easiest and probably most obvious one is using a VPN, a virtual private network.
Right, those mask your location.
Exactly. They make it look like you're accessing the internet from a different country, one without these age restrictions. And apparently, VPN providers are already reporting a, quote, significant increase in downloads among Australian teenagers.
So that's one loophole. What else? Simple age fraud.
Yep. Using a parent's ID or login details, perhaps, or maybe trying to create accounts now before the December 2025 deadline kicks in.
But didn't you say the law addresses existing accounts too?
It does try to. That's where the mandate for platforms to verify existing accounts comes in. So just signing up today might not be enough to slip through the net long term. They're supposed to catch those later.
Supposed to.
Right. But perhaps the biggest concern for child safety experts isn't just kids staying on the main platforms illegally. It's where else they might go, the migration risk.
You mean if they get kicked off Instagram, they won't just stop talking online?
Exactly. The fear is they'll migrate to less common, often less regulated spaces. Think smaller, niche apps, maybe gaming platforms that have integrated chat features, alternative social networks that just don't have the same level of safety infrastructure, moderation, or oversight as the big players.
Pushing them into darker corners of the internet, potentially.
That's the worry. It could inadvertently expose them to greater risks than they faced on the mainstream platforms the law is targeting.
Despite all these challenges and potential downsides, the global attention on this is intense, isn't it? Framing Australia as this giant real-time experiment.
It absolutely is. It's seen as a crucial learning opportunity for the entire world, really. You've got academics like researchers at Deakin University who've already launched major longitudinal studies.
Tracking kids over time to see what actually happened?
Precisely. They're following cohorts of 13 to 16-year-olds for, I think, the next 2 years, specifically to measure the impact of this ban.
And what are they measuring? Just screen time?
Much more than that. They're looking at the holistic picture. Mental health metrics like anxiety levels, self-esteem, academic impact grades, attention span, social development, things like friendship quality, feelings of loneliness, even physical health aspects like sleep quality.
That's comprehensive.
It needs to be.
Yeah.
And that data, that's exactly what policymakers in the UK, Canada, the EU, various US states, that's what they're eagerly waiting for.
To see if this bold move actually works or if the costs outweigh the benefits.
Right. As Professor Jonathan Haidt put it, Australia really is now engaged in a massive national experiment, one that could genuinely redefine our understanding of healthy digital development for young people globally.
So the ultimate verdict on whether this was the right call, it really hangs on what those scientists find in the coming years. #tag outro.
So wrapping this up, what have we learned from this deep dive? We've seen a truly world-first regulatory approach, right? Driven by very real, measurable concerns about adolescent mental health.
Definitely. But it's one that comes with these huge trade-offs, doesn't it?
Absolutely huge. From significant economic disruption for families caught up in the creator economy.
To that very real risk of pushing vulnerable kids into less safe, unregulated online spaces. It's complex.
It really is. The ultimate success, as you said, won't really be measured by whether platforms comply or how many fines are issued.
No, it's got to be about the actual impact on the well-being of those teenagers. That scientific data being gathered right now is crucial.
And fundamentally, the ban is an attempt to push back against that attention economy model, right? The design that's deliberately addictive, particularly for young people.
Trying to carve out a space where development isn't constantly being shaped or maybe manipulated by algorithms seeking engagement.
Exactly. And if the research coming out of Australia does show that healthier digital environments are possible, that this ban leads to measurable improvements, well, Australia could genuinely become a leader.
Setting a template for what maybe more humane technology frameworks could look like.
Potentially. Which leads us to the final thought for you, the listener, to consider. If this Australian experiment is deemed a success,
If the data shows real benefits.
will the rest of the world then face a much starker choice? A choice between continuing to allow largely unregulated, profit-driven digital platforms to shape youth,
Or stepping in, like Australia, to demand a more humane approach to digital design, especially for its youngest citizens. It's a massive question.